welcome to the Deep Dive. You've given us the sources, and our job, well, it's to dig in and pull out those really fascinating bits, the stuff that makes you go, aha, without getting totally lost in the weeds. So today, you've pointed us towards, honestly, a genuine historical puzzle. It's this cryptic inscription that's baffled people for ages.
That's right. We're diving into some excerpts from Dr. Pooyan Gamari's new book, Celestial Whispers, Decoding an Ancient Cosmic Enigma. And we're really focusing on this one specific sequence, no Okawar, I-Fi I-3305, 08, 11, 17, 42, tag 0208.
Wow.
Yeah. What can this string of symbols actually tell us about the past, maybe even about, ourselves?
And the story of how it was found, I mean, it's pure historical drama, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got Constantinople, 1453. The city's literally about to fall to the Ottomans.
Right on the edge.
And this group of scholars, led by a guy named Nicholas Astrollo, sounds like a character straight out of fiction. They find this fragile old parchment. And it wasn't just any document, was it? They thought it might hold keys to, lost civilizations. So what does this whole thing tell us about how people tried to figure out the universe back then, and why are we still talking about it?
Well, what's really striking is that these scholars, even with everything going on, the chaos, they saw something special in this single line. Instantly. There were these faint drawings underneath, maybe astronomical sketches, that hinted at this cosmic connection. It really shows you how back then, things like astronomy, philosophy, even spirituality, they weren't separate boxes like today. They were all mixed together.
Okay, let's try and unpack this code then. Starting at the beginning, no 112. The scholars who first found it, they had a few different ideas, right? It wasn't just number 12.
Not at all. They were looking at it from different angles. One idea was maybe the 12th year of some forgotten king's rule, from a civilization we've completely lost track of.
Hard to prove, though. Very hard to prove without more evidence, yeah. But, cyclical time, regnal years.
Yeah.
That was common back then. So plausible. Another thought linked it straight to the heavens, the 12th sign of the zodiac, Pisces.
Okay.
And a third possibility, this one reached back even further, to Babylonian astronomy.
Babylonian. Why specifically them? What's the link there?
Well, the Babylonians were, brilliant early astronomers, meticulous observers, and they divided the ecliptic, the sun's path, into 12 parts, a lot like the later zodiac, actually.
Oh, okay.
So seeing 12, the scholars might have thought, hang on, maybe this connects to that really ancient system of mapping the sky.
So just those first few characters, you've got earthly kings, cosmic cycles, lots of possibilities. Okay, next bit. Alpha II, what did the classically trained scholars make of that part?
Right, so Alpha I, they immediately drew on classical symbolism. Alpha, first letter of the Greek alphabet, pretty straightforwardly means beginning, the origin.
The start. Exactly. The II bit, though, that was interesting. Maybe just simple tally marks. Or maybe something deeper, like an ancient dualistic principle, like yin and yang, light and dark, that kind of fundamental pairing. They thought the I might represent something like that.
And wasn't there a connection to early Christian thought as well?
Yeah.
How did that symbolism sort of overlay onto it?
Yes, definitely. Some scholars brought that in. Alpha in Christianity, symbolizes God as the beginning and the end, Alpha and Omega.
Right.
So the repeated I could then be seen in a theological light, maybe repeated acts of creation or divine presence manifesting twice. It's fascinating how these symbols could hold meaning across different belief systems.
It really is. And the source mentions some subtle markings on the edge, linking it maybe to the Ptolemaic dynasty. What were those, and why is that connection important?
Yeah, these faint markings. They were apparently specific little stylistic things in the illustration, maybe some notes in a script style they associated with libraries in Ptolemaic Egypt.
So Greek rulers of Egypt, after Alexander.
Exactly. Known for their libraries, their science, the Library of Alexandria.
Wow.
So it raises this really interesting question for you, the listener. How did a scroll that might have started in Egypt centuries before end up in Constantinople right before it fell? It hints at these incredible, often invisible journeys of knowledge across time and space.
That's a great point. Okay, let's tackle the numbers now. 33, 05, 08, 11, 17, 42, TAC, 0208. This looks like where things could get really complex. Let's start with the 33. What did they think that number meant?
Well, the number 33, that immediately got the attention of the more, let's say, astrologically or spiritually minded scholars in the group. In lots of different traditions, 33 is seen as this significant spiritual number, a point of transformation, maybe enlightenment. But others, looking at it more astronomically, wondered if it was maybe a latitude, a specific degree on an old star chart, marking where some important celestial event was seen way back when.
Spiritual awakening versus a spot on a map. Quite different takes. What about the next bit? 05, 08, 11, 17, 42. That longer sequence. What did that suggest?
Yeah, that longer string of numbers, it really pointed towards astronomy for many of them. One idea, maybe these were hours, but in some older timekeeping system, not our 24-hour clock.
Okay.
Another really interesting theory was that these were like reference points for watching planets, maybe, at specific intervals. Given how important planets like Jupiter and Saturn were in ancient astrology, they wondered if these numbers tracked some specific alignment.
Almost like sky watching instructions. And there was another interpretation too, wasn't there? Something a bit more poetic.
Yes, some of the more imaginative ones saw it differently. They pictured these numbers as maybe plotting where bright stars would be at different times of night or over several nights, like a kind of song of the cosmos, they called it.
Song of the cosmos. I like that.
Yeah, a numerical map of the sky's dance, its patterns changing. It's a much more metaphorical way of seeing it, isn't it?
Definitely. Okay, last part. Hashtag 0208. Looks like a date February 8th. But even that wasn't straightforward.
Nope, not entirely. The simplest idea was, yes, February 8th, a significant date. Why it was significant, that was the mystery.
Right.
But another theory, quite intriguing, was that the hash symbol wasn't about a date at all. Maybe it was an index mark, like a reference number in some lost library catalog.
Oh, wow.
Which would mean this whole inscription might just be a pointer, a key to finding a whole collection of other hidden scrolls.
That opens up a whole other level. It's incredible how every little piece of this code seems to branch off in so many directions.
Yeah.
You can see why the original scholars felt they needed to maybe take a step back and think philosophically. How did big thinkers like Aristotle and Plotinus help them frame this?
Right. Turning to classical philosophy gave them a sort of intellectual toolkit. Aristotle's ideas about form and essence being expressible through numbers, that seemed to fit perfectly with this numerical code.
Makes sense.
And then Plotinus, with his concept of a universal mind, an intelligence ordering everything through numerical principles, that offered a grander, more cosmic way to think about the whole sequence.
And Nicholas Astralos, the leader of the group, how did he try to pull all these different threads, the zodiac, the numbers, the philosophy, into one single idea?
Astralos really tried to synthesize it all. He suggested no 12th time was about a fundamental cycle like the zodiac signs or the months of the year, a basic rhythm of time, both celestial and earthly.
Okay.
And Alpha I, he saw that as the beginning, the alpha, but reflected somehow the I being like a mirror, showing a basic duality or balance in nature itself.
A cycle mirrored in creation. Quite a concept. And the complex number sequence. How did that fit into his grand view?
He proposed that 33, 05, 08, 11, 17, 42 was essentially mapping celestial movements. Planets, the moon, maybe comets, tracking them across the sky, noting key points in lunar and solar calendars. And he specifically pointed out how often the number 33 pops up in myths and mystical stuff. As for the hashtag 0208, Astralos thought it might be a kind of universal key. It could point to a crucial astrological event on that date, maybe a historical turning point, or, yeah, even that specific entry in some lost library catalog.
So his synthesis brought together cycles, creation, celestial mechanics, and this tantalizing idea of a hidden key to more knowledge. He was really reaching for a big, unifying cosmic principle, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In all this thinking, it led them into some deep philosophical waters, too.
Absolutely. Trying to crack this code forced them to wrestle with huge questions like destiny versus free will. Were these stars dictating what happened on Earth?
The age-old question.
Exactly. And this idea of celestial resonance. Do the heavens directly influence us? Ultimately, they were part of that timeless human quest, trying to figure out our place in the whole cosmic picture. The inscription was just the spark for these much bigger thoughts.
It's just so poignant to think they were having these huge debates right as the city was falling around them. What happened to the manuscript, to their work, when Constantinople finally fell?
Well, the siege intensified, and they knew time was up. They had to flee. They couldn't possibly solve the inscription's riddle before the city was lost. So in that rush, they made copies.
Sure.
Yeah, copies of the parchment. And as they scattered, seeking safety, those copies went with them. Some ended up in Italy, feeding into the Renaissance buzz. Others got tucked away safely in monasteries, hidden gems for later discovery.
And this sequence, this code, it didn't just disappear then. It popped up again later.
Amazingly, no, it didn't vanish. References to this exact sequence, 12, Alpha, I, 33, and so on, they reappeared centuries later. You find hints in strange alchemical texts, and there are even rumors of it being found in notes belonging to huge figures like Copernicus and Galileo.
No way, Copernicus and Galileo.
That's the rumor.
Right.
Which just shows how this thing kept capturing imaginations, suggesting it held some really profound secret.
It really makes you wonder what it actually was. Was it about kings in history, or was it a star map pointing to cosmic secrets? And maybe the fact that we still don't know for sure is part of why it's so fascinating.
Precisely. And that really brings us to how we can look at it now. Dr. Gamari, in his book, positions this code as this amazing crossroads where history, astrology, and philosophy all meet.
Yeah.
Looking at this inscription today, it's like stepping back in time, watching those scholars struggle and think and try to make sense of the heavens. Maybe, as you listen, you might even see echoes of how you try to make sense of complex information yourself.
And Dr. Gamari suggests that maybe trying to decode it is actually more important than finding the answer.
That's a really key point he makes, yeah. He suggests the real gift of this code is the quest itself. It's about that very human urge to explore the edges where reason meets myth, where logic meets intuition. It makes us think about our place in the universe, and kind of unexpectedly, it can even lead us to understand ourselves a bit better.
So this ancient inscription found right at this pivotal moment in history, it keeps echoing through time. Not as a solved puzzle, maybe, but as what Dr. Gamari calls a call to wonder, reminding us how fascinated we have always been with the cosmos and maybe the wisdom hidden in the past.
Right. Even though we don't have that single definitive answer, just exploring the interpretations, the ideas those scholars wrestled with centuries ago, that alone tells us so much about the history of human thought, our constant drive to find meaning out there, just grappling with no 12 Alpha II 330508111742 hashtag 0208 reveals this incredibly rich landscape.
So for you, our listeners, you continue your own deep dives. Think about what part of this ancient code grabs you the most. Is it the history, the drama of his discovery? Is it the astronomical puzzle pieces? Or is it those big philosophical questions it throws up about us and the universe? Maybe exploring this old enigma opens up some new paths in your own search for knowledge.